Hi, it's Jake.
And it's Jane.
We are at the medicine wheel, which was a thing that I put into the game when I was first grayboxing it and learning how to make anything in a game like this.
That was in really early, I think. Basically, we put in a tower, and then very soon afterwards, that was the medicine wheel.
Yeah, it was just like, I think it was a thing Sean and I thought would be cool to have in the game. I did not know how to make a medicine wheel, so, or rather, I didn't know how to make a video game, I guess. So I made it the way a real medicine wheel is made, which is out of a ton of tiny, tiny rocks, which meant that whenever anyone in the office turned their camera towards where the medicine wheel was...
From the tower,
the frame rate died. And then you went in and fixed it, which is great. And by replacing it with like a real game thing that a real...
And also it actually streams out really fast now.
Yeah, it's like the most efficient medicine wheel ever put in a game.
And it's a fantastic landmark actually, because you know, there's like nothing else like it in the game. I was like, oh, the medicine wheel, like you instantly know where you are.
Yep. When doing work on Firewatch's environment art and skies and all these other things, what do you keep in mind when you think about like a player has walked through here before? How do I keep it fresh when they come back through?
So we want to make sure that it looks different from, from different directions, and also the lighting and the feel of the whole area has got to be different, so it seems like a totally new area.
Yeah, it was surprising to me how much, even if you're walking like just north to south through an area, if you go through it once and then if you go through it the next day, or a later part in the game and you and Ollie have just swung the sun 180 degrees, so all the shadows are going the other way, it can feel completely fresh. Or the obvious trick is make them go through it the opposite direction.
Yeah. But both things together really make a whole space feel like a totally new space.
Yeah, that was a thing that I think you and Ollie and I collectively tried really hard to do, is like keep the player walking in as many different directions at as many different times of day as we could, because we knew that the world was fixed. It's not...
Yeah, like we want to reuse areas, but also we don't want to feel like we're making people backtrack, right?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Jane again. So Nels, what is a controlled burn?
A controlled burn is actually a technique that real wildland firefighters use. They actually have these amazing things called drip cans, which are basically like Tin Man oil can, except they're just full of like extremely flammable fluid and they're always on fire. So yeah, it's awesome. So basically firefighters will dig a bunch of like fire breaks and then use these drip cans to light a bunch of small controlled fires to burn out all the flammable materials in an area that that a big, like proper uncontrolled wildfire is approaching, so that when the fire, due to the wind or whatever, gets to that area is already burned, so the fire can't keep spreading kind of past where that burn was. So in the case in the game right here, the idea is that the firefighter crew burned out all the fuel right next to the river, so that the fire couldn't be blown basically across the river. That the hope is between the controlled burn and the river itself, the fire wouldn't actually spread all the way up to Two Forks and beyond. As you will discover later in the game, they did not succeed at that. As is often the case in the real world, fires are nothing if not unpredictable.
In terms of technically how we achieve this, basically we have a pre-burn sector that is all lush and beautiful, full of trees that you cannot push through, so it works great as a gate. And after the controlled burn in the story, we swapped the whole area, this whole piece, including the ground and all the trees in it, with a new piece of artwork, basically, to the post-burn sector, which lets the player walk right through.
It's interesting that like there's kind of this baseline of the world, and then there are these almost just two chunks just sitting right on top of it.
The world is kind of made of tiles in a way, so like we have the option to swap different tiles in and out, and this is a great place to use that technology.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Hi, Jake.
Hey, Jane. In this garden surrounded by scary mannequins seems like a great place to talk about how you figure out perspective and scale when making a level.
Yeah, so when you start making a game, one of the first things you need to do is to have scale reference. So what we did was just download a bunch of free scale models, actually.
Yep, just some royalty-free, T-posed nude men and women.
I think like the man is just the default ZBrush man.
Before you put in the trees and before you put in the grass and before you put in the
Yeah.
rocks, when all you have is terrain, it can look like it's like a 6-foot wide hallway or it's like a quarter mile wide and
Right.
you can't even tell in first person. But then once, boop, there's just a little nude man out there.
Yeah.
You really know.
Yeah, how tall is this tree? Oh my gosh, it's actually, it's a really tall tree.
Yeah,
Though it
well,
looks tiny before you
Yep.
put the scale man in.
So there's also, you'll notice there's a collection of different scale men out here. When we first dropped our scale scale people in,
Yes.
they came in with some default material that was like this
It's-
glistening
Yeah.
onyx stone.
I think the default Unity material back then was just some very glossy black.
Yeah, so we had these like just rippling, glistening stone statues, including parts.
Full anatomy.
There were some parts that were very good at catching the light, and I think when Nels was
the
gray boxing,
bikini parts.
yeah, Nels was like, I gotta get in real close on some parts of this level, and I just don't know about this. So then the next day when we got latest,
It's very distracting when the gloss material is.
it's debatable
you know.
though if that's more or less distracting than the jean shorts that were slapped on. It feels to me, Jane, like in early dev, as you got bored, you just kept like festooning the scale man with more stuff.
I think it was one of those times when I was like, is it worth spending 15 minutes to make myself happy?
Yes.
And I was like, yes.
And then
it's
like
worth
maybe
15 minutes
maybe
to put
some more time
jorts
to
on
add
this.
some love handles and
Oh, yeah.
then like some heart-shaped chest hair. Who's to say? Who's to
You know,
say?
15 minutes turned into 30 minutes of fun, and now,
Oh man, by the end of the production,
It's
gray
so
box
worth
thing was
it.
really fun. Or like you'd know that there was someone was in there working because you would just see all these like
Yeah.
love-handled jorts, Henry chest hair dudes floating all over the place.
I think my favorite parts is also when you've done level designing a space. Sometimes you've lifted the terrain without lifting the scale men. So sometimes once in a while I'm like, why is this area kind of not performing great? And I look under the earth and there's like four
There's just
buried
floating
scale men
never nudes.
underneath. And I'm
It's
like,
fine.
oh, thanks, Jake. Delete.
It's fine. Yeah,
Those are my favorite little Jake surprises.
it's good. Or like you'll see one off in the sky. Like in this case, there's a couple deliberately way out in the distance because I wanted people to look at how forced perspective works also. So zoom in on some jorts, guys. Be happy.
Oh, actually, another note about the scale lady here. She's actually the same model that we use for the teens in the lake.
Oh, that's true.
We just added a ponytail. Really.
And sparklers.
Thing that is great about Pork Pond, other than it is called Pork Pond, which is a wonderful thing to say. You should want to say it?
Pork pond.
Pork Pond. Pork Pond.
It's not even really a pond.
It's barely a pond.
It's like a pork puddle, really.
It's pork puddle. It may have been a pond at one point. Later, dear player, hopefully you noticed that there is a Pork Pond sign in Delilah's lookout tower. After Delilah has told you, if you talk about Pork Pond, that people just keep stealing the sign.
And
So
how
that's
it
why
looks
there's no
great
sign.
in like a den or,
A den, or
a
right in
lookout
front of me.
cabin, really.
Yeah, and that's one of those things that was really fun about making this game with such a small team, is that I named Pork Pond after my girlfriend's dog, Pork Belly, who I like very much. He has a Japanese chin, and he is very weird. And then I wrote the goof about the sign not being there because there wasn't a sign. And then the next thing I knew, someone said, "Oh, it should be in Delilah's lookout." I don't know if that was you, Jane, but that's the sort of thing you would do. Is
Might
you'd be like,
be.
"I was playing the game, and I felt like that Pork Pond sign should be in Delilah's
Like
tower."
if I were Delilah, I would have totally stolen it.
Exactly right. So then we just say yes, and we keep putting goofs into the game. So that is the Ballad of Pork Pond.
Pork puddle pond.
Pork Puddle Pond. I like this is our only tape together,
I know. It's about
and
pork
it was
pond.
just us saying Pork Pond about 15 or 20 times. Pork Pond.
If you look around, you should see a TV in front of you with a pretty weird-looking image on it. That is actually what Henry looks like from third person. So you're looking at Henry as we saw him in Unity Editor.
Yeah, Henry is very much sort of an ultimate Cronenberg nightmare. He's got sort of like, we call them the spider bones, where you can stretch his shoulders really far away from his torso. Early on, I remember looking at a GIF with the team of like how Crysis was doing their first-person stuff. And if you looked at it, you could sort of see his spine and neck becoming this mad giraffe creature. And we took that concept and ran with it. So we ended up sort of like almost any animation in the game, if you look at it from outside of the exact angle we want you to, it would completely destroy immersion and you'd be horrified and possibly sick.
Coming up here on the end, Jacob,
Yes, Sean.
Henry and Delilah are talking, and then there's a clatter, and you realize there's just been an open third line on their conversation. And I remember coming up with this, or something like this, I think in my living room before we had an office in the summer and fall of 2013.
Yeah, the idea that you hear someone like cough over the radio seems like the sort of thing that got us really excited when we were in like day zero of talking about making Firewatch.
Yeah, we had another idea back in the lakeside of this day, the beginning of this day, where you would hear your conversation coming out of a radio nearby, but just the way our audio system worked and like the peculiarities of trying to get that to work just never really read to the player when people would play it. But we had all these moments. This is sort of like the way we think about the design of a story like this in general, for better or for worse, at least this game, where we would sit down and just pitch each other all these moments that were really disconnected once we had a conceit, like there's somebody listening to you on the radio. Like, oh, a guy punches you out. Like, oh, you hear your voice coming from a bush, which we didn't end up using. Oh,
you rip your bed apart and find a bug under the mattress.
Oh my God.
Someone was listening in your tower.
Yeah, we were going to bug the tower.
I think we actually had a bulletin board up in the office full of tiny Post-it notes that were just cool ideas.
Cool story things.
And if we could
happen.
find a place for them, we'd pull them off that and put them on the linear list of like Crypt Path events.
Yeah, there's things that we could just sort of like put as little like mile markers in the story, and not knowing how you would get to them because you'd play your own way. But if we had enough of those in the story that were surprising, then maybe you, player, would like it.
There isn't any way someone, like another lookout, could be on this line, is there?
No. Not without tapping our radios.
So I found notes between these two rangers, Ron and Dave. You know them?
Yeah. What do they have to do with anything?
Well, nothing, I don't think. I just found a cassette tape one of them left for the other.
Do you think it could be anything like the tape you have of us?
And I think it's just music.
Well, if it's the new Milli Vanilli, it could be just as incriminating.
Hey, Jake.
Hey, Chris.
So over the course of Firewatch's development, we, I think, swung back and forth pretty wildly in terms of how much we wanted to play up the conspiracy part of the story and how explicit we wanted to make Goodwin's involvement and how much we wanted the player to buy into it versus how much we wanted the player to think this was sort of all in Henry's head or played up between Henry and Delilah. And the research site was really the moment in the game where
There's definitive proof something is happening, whatever it is.
we obviously knew as the developers of the game that the reality of the situation was a little bit sadder and more mundane. I think we kind of wanted there to be this big moment that suggests, oh, maybe this is something really huge.
Yeah,
And I think
it's
we
funny.
got carried away a little bit.
Yeah, I think
arguably.
we arguably / probably did. And thinking back to it now, the reason that the typed reports came into the story at all, as you said about the pendulum going back and forth, I think we didn't like the story being 100% ambiguous. I don't know if we knew that we could support a world where Henry and the player and Delilah 100% construct a reality that doesn't have a single shred of proof, and we're like, okay, well, we got excited about maybe it's the 70s conspiracy moment of like, you're in a room full of whirring
I think
machines.
we on the team kind of hyped ourselves up in the same way Henry and Delilah do. I mean, I remember when I first the first draft of the music that you're hearing right now. I showed it to you only, I think, because I felt too stupid to show it to anyone else because I'm like, this is so ridiculous. We can't put this in our game.
Well, the one with
and you were like, oh, maybe we should put it in our
I don't
game.
know. Henry's going nuts. Everyone's going nuts.
It's true. We're all going nuts.
Maybe it could have been pulled back a little bit on all fronts from what you're observing right now, but maybe it's the best. Maybe it's for the best.
Could be. Could be.
Figure out what this thing is picking up.
Hi, this is Jane. I'm back again, and now I'm here with...
Will Nunes. I was a prop artist.
And this is one of the few areas in Firewatch where it's not just about trees and rocks. So we wanted to make sure that this area feels very man-made and that is spooky and is ambiguous. Like, the goal here is that you're gonna get here and you're not quite sure if this is like a surveillance operation or if it's scientific, and that's kind of what I told Will when we were trying to make a lot of props, and Will was really great about it. And I was just like, hey Will, can you please just make a bunch of boring scientific equipment?
Yeah, I mean, we were actually just looking up a lot of stuff like, stuff that monitored, thermal energy and stuff like that, like very, very standard kind of scientific equipment, but arranged in kind of a sense that made it look kind of a little more eerie and a little more cluttered and haphazard and not really definable from someone that didn't really understand what this equipment was.
Yeah, I think if you actually look up each prop, that they actually are real, like, equipment, right?
Yes, I used reference from the late 80s for all this equipment. They're all real equipment that people use to, monitor the wind or environment, stuff like that.
Is there like a favorite piece of prop in this tent, Will?
I would say the equipment. Just it's really simple, but I had a lot of fun making it and kind of seeing the layout and kind of trying to convey this kind of eerie looking equipment, doing something you're not quite sure what it's about, ambiguously, technical, and seeing where I could take it and seeing kind of, the colors and the mood and how that would all fit together and how to set that scene right.
Yeah, okay.
You don't sound too excited about that.
I'm not.
Look, worst case scenario,
A firefighter dies trying to put out what we started, and we live with that on our conscience for the rest of our lives.
fuck. Yeah, worst case. Well, maybe it's not the best idea.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best idea.
Ah, so fucking wound up.
It's all right. I'm just gonna hike back. We have the wave receiver, and tomorrow we can figure out what to do. Oh, shit! Delilah, there's smoke coming from the site. I just climbed out of there and the bridge collapsed.
What the hell happened to you? It's definitely not the best idea.
It wasn't me!
What do we do?
We just call it in like any other fire.
And what about who started it? What about them?
The person who started it?
Yeah.
We're talking about people watching us out here who are now burning the forest and everything in it around us. I don't know what to do about that.
Except get the hell out.
Yes, get us the hell out of here.
It'd be a lot easier to work together had you gotten that radio.
I'm sure you can figure it out on your own.
I'll try. Is any proof we were down there?
My thinking is I'm gonna follow this wave receiver.
Ooh, I like it when you think.
Ay, ay, ay.
Nels, it's the spooky nighttime scene.
So spooky. Impossibly spooky.
Coming up with this scene was funny because the bag that is in the little grove here is known, I think, definitely internally, I don't know if this is in the game, but as the bug out bag.
Oh, it is definitely the bug out bag. This is what actual hardcore survivalists call their, oh man, if the nukes hit New York City, I can grab my 2 bug out bags, they're in my closet, throw them in the back of my pickup, and drive immediately within 12 minutes of the air raid siren or whatever.
Yeah, and it's funny because we wanted it to tell a really sort of a nuanced story that didn't hit you over the head with exposition.
Yes.
And I think the bug out bag is probably a little confusing.
It might have been a bit too nuanced.
It's definitely confusing upon first discovery. This is Ned Goodwin's bug out bag,
Yes.
which is the heat's getting too close. I've gone too deep. This Henry and Delilah charade, and I'm gonna have to leave really soon.
Yeah.
So if Henry gets too close, I'm just rappelling down, scurrying over to get this bag, and I'm out. And I might as well wire it to a battery for the effort, so if it gets discovered, I know that it's gone.
Exactly.
I don't get led into a trap.
And this is things that, like, actual, weirdo hermit people that live in the woods. Like, this is actually a thing that they'll have. They'll have, like, their main campsite, but then if their main campsite is discovered, they have, like, another second supply cache where they can just grab their stuff and disappear. And it just happened to be that Goodwin, for sentimental or other reasons, was keeping the key to the cave on this backpack. He didn't like in any way leave it for Henry intentionally. It just happened to be that the weird electronics on it also got picked up by the wave receiver, and then what was meant to be like Goodwin's safety net backup thing is actually what is his ultimate undoing.
Yeah, and there's an article in a GQ magazine that I think you'll probably be talking about later, Nels, written by a reporter named Michael Finkel about this hermit who lived in Maine.
Christopher Thomas Knight.
It's a wonderful, wonderful long read. You can find it online. Again, it's GQ magazine, and I plumbed this thing for inspiration for Goodwin and how he would set up his camp and what he would do if he thought he was going to get caught. And it was an idea that I know went into my notebook upon reading this article. It's really great, and it's really wonderful reporting from Michael Finkel.
It's a tape of us talking down at the site. It sounds like it was recorded from somewhere nearby.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and it sounds like we were the ones who burned it down and that it was your idea.
No.
We are screwed.
No!
Dee, just don't freak out, okay? Don't freak out.